Today we got some sad news in the world of professional wrestling. WWE Hall of Famer, Pro Wrestling Hall of Famer, one of the all-time greats in this business. If you've been watching wrestling for the last 40 years, you obviously know who he is. Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff passed away this morning at the age of 71 years old. We had known for the last couple of weeks, especially his health had already started to decline. But at the same time, we had heard that he was suffering with dementia and all that, and there was a video that came out, I believe, 2 weeks ago that his son had put out, kind of giving a health update, and Paul, unfortunately, did not look good. He looked like he was definitely suffering. Looked like he was definitely going through it at that time. So it's good to see that he's now in a better place, no longer in pain, and all that. I didn't watch Paul Orndorff's obviously run in the WWE in real time because I had gotten to wrestling the same year he left the WWF. I think he left in '88, actually, technically '88, but his last run really with the WWE was actually in 1987. He had that run with Hogan in the early '87. When he was a heel, of course. And then I think he had one run against, when he turned face again in late '87 and was, going against Bobby Heenan's, faction, of course, of King Kong Bundy and Rick Rude and all that. And then, but by '88, he was off TV pretty much. When I personally think Paul Orndorff, obviously Mr. Wonderful, and obviously he's had more than just WWE. He did stuff in WCW and other promotions. But for me personally, like I look at his career, it's really the WWE run he did, and to me his biggest run with the company was the feud with Hulk Hogan, and that went 2 years. That went from '85 to '87, where they hated each other, and then they loved each other, and they hate each other again, and then liked each other again in the end. I don't even remember that Survivor Series '87. He was actually on Hogan's team. Can you believe that? But his run against Hogan, one of my favorite feuds in the history of the business. And his match he did with Hogan, the score to settle it all, the steel cage, the first ever steel cage match on broadcast television, in January 1987, on Saturday night's main event. It's classic. I watch that match at least once a year because it's a classic match. It's to me, when you watch that match and you understand the business and what was going on in the WWE at the time, it's brilliant storytelling. It's something you don't see anymore in wrestling today. Much as I love wrestling today, you don't see that kind of brilliant storytelling. You have obviously Paul Orndorff, who had stolen Hogan's theme song, "Real American," to go to the ring. I think that when he had turned on Hogan again in '86 and the series of matches they were doing, he had started using Hogan's theme song and to go to the ring. So you hear it twice. You hear him come down with it, and then you have Hogan come down with it. But that '87 match in Saturday's main event, January 3rd, 1987, you had obviously him stealing the theme music. You had Danny Davis, the crooked referee, who would at that point around that time become suspended for life and end up becoming a wrestler for a little while. That angle where he came down to the steel cage and inserted himself into the match. Obviously, whose foot hit the ground first? The controversy there, and then you have, of course, Danny Davis and Joey Marella, arguing behind it and all that. It's brilliant storytelling. But Paul Orndorff was one of the greats, man. I mean, he was, teaming with Hogan, then feuding with Hogan and all that. To me, that you think of his entire career, and that's the feud that really made him who he was. And we're not, obviously he never beat Hogan for the title, but again, in a scripted sport like this, it was still a great feud. Like if I tell you top 5 Hogan feuds of all time, it might crack the top 5. I mean, it might really do. Between Andre and Savage, obviously, and Hogan's feud with Earthquake is another one, but the Orndorff feud is actually up there. I think it's probably top 5 feud of Hogan, and that feud really, for me personally, put Orndorff on the map for me, and respecting him. And as I got older, and appreciating the business, especially too. Made me really appreciate what he did and what he brought to the, as a heel, especially. He was a fantastic heel, fantastic heel. Some really cool vignettes also he did as well too. That's really kind of underrated in my opinion. Him in a gym trying to, there's people there watching him work out, and he's telling people to work out, and then he's giving some guy telling me, get off the machine, you're not good enough, and just kind of being cocky and being a prick and all that. But it was fantastic vignettes. I mean, again, he in that era too, he was up there, man. He was one of those guys. Okay, it's because when you're a champion, Hulk Hogan for 4 years, you need to throw guys at him to make him bigger, make his stature mean something. You need good heels, and obviously you had Savage, you had Andre, obviously, King Kong Bundy, Roddy Piper, of course, who was obviously, Mr. Wonderful was involved in that WrestleMania 1 match between Hogan and Mr. T versus Orndorff and Roddy Piper, and but again, Orndorff was arguably the biggest heel next to Andre in that time. He made Hogan look at Bill Bucks, especially too. It went hand in hand, obviously, because Hogan was great himself. But man, we lost a good one. We lost a great one, actually. So if you're youngin', obviously, and I would suggest, I would recommend look through that Hogan, not just that match. But obviously, that match is fantastic, but look through that entire feud from 1988, 85 through 87. From WrestleMania 1 all the way down, off and on. It's a good feud, man. It's a great feud.